Okay, here's your story. Rewritten in American English with conjunctions, punctuation, emotional and atmospheric details, new character names except for the US units of measurement, and a concluding section with lessons learned and a call to action. The Unraveling. A sister's betrayal and a path to freedom, Montclair, 29 years old, and I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd wake up bald the day before my sister's wedding. My fingers, trembling uncontrollably, crept up to my scalp, discovering raw, exposed patches where my long golden blonde hair used to be. Clumps of it lay scattered across my bedroom floor, a devastating tableau of golden casualties shimmering cruelly in the morning light. In the doorway stood my mother, Eleanor's scissors glinting in her hand, a disturbingly satisfied smile playing on her lips. Ava's wedding was tomorrow, and my own family, the people who were supposed to cherish me, had betrayed me in the most horrific way imaginable. Before I delve deeper into my story, let me know where you're watching from, and please subscribe to follow my journey from victim to victor in the face of unimaginable family betrayal. To truly grasp why my parents would commit such a monstrous act, you need to understand our family's twisted history. Growing up in suburban Chicago, under the watchful eyes of our neighbors, I was always the pretty one, while my sister Ava was meticulously labeled the smart one. This wasn't a choice I made, nor a label I ever truly embraced. These were roles our parents Eleanor and Richard assigned us from an incredibly young age, cementing our identities in ways that would haunt us for years. The truth is, I worked tirelessly in school, maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA throughout college, and eventually landed a fantastic marketing job. Yet in my parents' eyes, especially my mother's Ava's accomplishments, consistently eclipsed mine, casting a long dark shadow over my own achievements. Our home, a stately 4-bedroom colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and a pristine white picket fence, looked idyllic from the outside. My father, Richard, worked as a successful financial advisor, while my mother, Eleanor, ran a thriving interior design business. We shared family dinners every night, a ritualistic performance of togetherness, and took annual vacations to Florida, painting a picture of the quintessential American family. But behind those closed doors, the family dynamic was nothing short of toxic. Ava got another A on her science project, my mother would proudly announce at dinner, then pivot her critical gaze piercing through me. Claire, maybe you could ask your sister for help with your homework instead of spending so much time on your hair. I remember with a pang of lingering hurt winning a poetry contest in high school. When I excitedly burst through the door clutching my certificate, my father barely glanced up from his newspaper. "That's nice, honey," he'd mumbled, his voice flat. "Did you hear Ava got accepted to that summer program at Yale?" This soul-crushing pattern continued throughout our lives. When I graduated college with honors, my mother, with a dismissive wave of her hand, commented on how lucky I was that my pretty face had gotten me through. When I landed my first professional job, my father, with a subtle smirk, suggested my boss probably hired me for the office view. These painful barbs, laced with casual cruelty, became so normalized that I learned to swallow my accomplishments, burying them deep inside rather than sharing them with my family. Ava wasn't an innocent bystander in this toxic dance. Growing up, she'd throw dramatic tantrums if I received any attention whatsoever. When we were teenagers, she once maliciously destroyed my prom dress the night before the dance because she overheard someone say I would likely be voted prom queen. She apologized tearfully afterward, and in my naive hope for sisterly love, I forgave her because that's what sisters are supposed to do, right? But the insidious pattern persisted into adulthood. When I was promoted at work last year, Ava didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When I bought my first car, a modest used Honda that I had meticulously saved for, she complained to our parents that I was showing off. It was utterly exhausting constantly trying to dim my own light to shrink myself just to maintain a semblance of peace in the family. Things escalated dramatically when Ava met Marcus, her now husband. He hailed from old money, worked at a prestigious law firm, and meticulously checked all the boxes my parents had for a suitable match. From the moment they started dating, Ava became even more intensely competitive with me, her jealousy festering like an open wound. If I wore a dress to Sunday dinner, she'd immediately make a snide comment about how I was always trying to steal attention. If I dared to mention a work accomplishment, she'd abruptly change the subject to her and Marcus's elaborate plans, determined to dominate every conversation. When they got engaged after just 6 months of dating, my parents were absolutely ecstatic, as if a great victory had been won. The wedding planning immediately consumed our family universe, becoming its sole gravitational pull. Every conversation, every family gathering, every holiday revolved around Ava's wedding. I genuinely tried to be supportive, offering to help with invitations, joining her for cake tastings, even using my design skills to create custom thank you cards. But nothing I did was ever enough. "You're just doing this to outshine me," Ava accused, her voice dripping with suspicion when I showed her the beautiful cards I had meticulously designed. You know you're better at this artsy stuff than I am. Despite the pervasive tension, I truly yearned to repair our fractured relationship. So when Ava, clearly under immense pressure from our extended family, who surely would have noticed my glaring absence, asked me to be a bridesmaid, I accepted, clinging to the faint hope that this might finally be a turning point for us. Just don't try to stand out, she warned, her voice laced with an unmistakable threat right after asking me. This is my day. Little did I know how far my family would go to ensure I didn't overshadow my sister on her supposed perfect day. The 6 months leading up to Ava's wedding were a masterclass in family dysfunction, a slow, agonizing descent into madness. As a bridesmaid, I was expected to attend every pre-wedding event with forced enthusiasm, while simultaneously making myself as invisible as humanly possible. The engagement party set the chilling tone. I wore a simple black dress, minimal makeup, and pulled my hair back into a conservative bun, meticulously avoiding anything that might draw attention. I stayed in the background, a silent shadow helping serve drinks, and ensuring Ava always had what she needed. Despite my exhaustive efforts, I overheard my mother and Aunt Carol in the kitchen, their whispers like venom. Claire is trying to behave, my mother sighed dramatically. But you know how men always look at her. Ava deserves one day where she's the absolute center of attention. Maybe suggest Claire wear something less flattering for the wedding, Aunt Carol offered, her eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Or have her do a reading so she's sitting at the front with her back to everyone. I pretended not to hear my stomach churning as I continued arranging desserts on platters, swallowing the bitter pill of hurt. The bridal shower was even worse, a gauntlet of subtle insults and simmering resentment. Ava's future mother-in-law, Catherine, a truly kind woman who mercifully didn't partake in the family's twisted dynamics, genuinely complimented my homemade decorations. You have such a natural eye for beauty, Claire, she said warmly, her smile genuine. These arrangements are stunning. Later, I found Ava sobbing uncontrollably in the bathroom, her face blotchy and red. You just couldn't help yourself, could you? She wailed, her voice thick with self-pity. You had to make sure everyone noticed your special touch on my bridal shower. Ava, I was just trying to make your day special, I replied. My voice weary, exhausted by the endless eggshells I was forced to walk on. Well, stop trying so hard. Everyone's talking about your decorations instead of my gifts. This demoralizing pattern repeated itself at every single event. At the bachelorette party, Ava accused me of flirting with the bartender, who was simply being friendly to everyone. At the dress fittings, she imperiously demanded I choose a bridesmaid dress a size too large, so I would look dumpy and shapeless. I complied, desperate for peace, willing to sacrifice pride. The rehearsal dinner was the undeniable breaking point. I wore a modest navy dress, flat shoes, and minimal makeup, a walking apology for my very existence. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, only speaking when directly addressed. But Ava's fiancé, Marcus's brother Ethan, kept engaging me in conversation. He was the best man seated right beside me, and his genuine warmth was a stark contrast to my family's chilling indifference. You and Ava look nothing alike. He observed, his gaze thoughtful. You're both beautiful, but in completely different ways. Thank you, I replied quietly, deflecting. Ava's the real beauty of the family. That's not what I see, he said kindly, a gentle smile playing on his lips. You have this natural glow about you, and your hair is amazing. I've never seen that shade of blonde outside of a magazine. I didn't realize my mother had overheard this innocent exchange until I saw her whispering furiously to Ava. Both of them staring daggers at me from across the table, their faces contorted with rage. Ava excused herself shortly after, and I found her having a complete meltdown in the restaurant's bathroom, the harsh fluorescent lights illuminating her mascara-streaked face. You're ruining everything, she screamed, her voice cracking with fury. Ethan hasn't stopped looking at you all night. Marcus's whole family is probably wondering why he didn't pick you instead. Ava, that's ridiculous. I tried to reason with her, my voice calm despite the tremor in my hands. Ethan was just being polite. Everyone here is celebrating you and Marcus. Then why did his mother ask if we were both models? She said we had the same cheekbones. Ava sobbed, her voice a desperate wail. You always do this. You always steal my spotlight. I spent the next hour calming her down, reapplying her smeared makeup, and assuring her she was the most beautiful bride-to-be in the entire world. By the time we returned to the table, I was emotionally drained, but foolishly still hopeful we had moved past the crisis. That night, after returning to my parents' house where I was staying for the wedding weekend, I made a special effort to connect with Ava, clinging to that fleeting hope. I knocked gently on her childhood bedroom door, a peace offering of her favorite chamomile tea in my hand. Can we talk? I asked softly. Surprisingly, she let me in. We sat on her bed like we used to as teenagers, a rare moment of shared history. And for a brief, fragile moment, I saw vulnerability instead of corrosive jealousy in her eyes. "I'm nervous about tomorrow," she admitted, her voice small. "What if I'm not good enough for Marcus?" "Ava, he adores you," I said sincerely, my heart aching for the sister I wished she could be. "Anyone can see that. You're going to be a beautiful bride and have an amazing life together." For a fleeting second, we connected like real sisters, a rare, precious bond. She even hugged me before I left for my own room. "Thanks, Claire," she murmured. "I'm glad you're going to be there tomorrow." I went to bed that night feeling a surprising surge of hope. Maybe the wedding would mark a new, healthier chapter in our relationship. Maybe once Ava was securely married, her deep-seated insecurities about me would finally fade. I fell asleep making mental promises to continue supporting her, to keep being the bigger person, to never give up on our sisterhood. I had no idea that while I dreamed of reconciliation, my parents were meticulously plotting my ultimate humiliation. The sensation of something softly brushing against my face jolted me awake. Still half asleep, I reached up to brush it away and felt something surprisingly soft fall across my hand. My eyes fluttered open to see a long, unmistakable lock of golden blonde hair, my hair, lying on my pillow. Confused, a cold dread beginning to coil in my stomach, I sat up quickly, and more hair cascaded from my shoulders, shimmering against the bedsheets. That's when I saw my mother standing at the foot of my bed, scissors still clutched in her hand, a horrifying pile of golden hair at her feet, a silent testament to her cruelty. My hands flew to my head in horror, feeling the uneven and jagged patches where my long, beloved hair had been brutally hacked away. Some areas were cut so close to the scalp, I could feel the raw skin, a chilling emptiness. "Mom," my voice emerged as a strangled whisper barely audible. "What did you do?" "What needed to be done," she replied calmly, her voice devoid of emotion, as if cutting off her sleeping daughter's hair was a perfectly rational act of justice. "This is for Ava. She deserves to shine on her wedding day." I couldn't process the surreal horror unfolding around me. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the mirror on my dresser, my reflection staring back at me, utterly unrecognizable. My hair, the long blonde waves I had grown and cared for since childhood, was utterly destroyed. Chopped in jagged, uneven patches with some areas nearly bald and others hanging in awkward, pathetic clumps. "Why?" I gasped, hot tears streaming down my face, blurring the grotesque image. "Why would you do this to me?" My father. Richard appeared in the doorway, then taking in the scene with chillingly cold eyes. "Now maybe someone will finally pity you instead of envying you," he said flatly, his voice devoid of a single shred of empathy. "Ava deserves to be the center of attention tomorrow, not you." The betrayal was so profound, so utterly unexpected, that I couldn't form words, my throat constricting with unshed sobs. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect me, and they had violated me while I slept, all to appease Ava's bottomless insecurities. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door, sliding down against it, as violent sobs racked my body. In the harsh bathroom lighting, the damage looked even worse, a grotesque parody of a haircut. My scalp was visible in several places where the scissors had cut far too close. There were even nicks where my skin had been cut raw and bleeding. One side was dramatically shorter than the other, a jagged, uneven mess. It wasn't just a bad haircut, it was a deliberate mutilation, an act of sheer malice. My hands shaking uncontrollably, I reached for my phone to call my friend Lena, only to discover it was missing. When I pounded on the bathroom door demanding my phone back, my mother calmly informed me they had put it somewhere safe until after the wedding. "You're not calling anyone," she said through the door, her voice annoyingly placid. "You're not going to ruin this for Ava with your drama." "Drama!" I screamed, the word tearing from my throat. "You cut off my hair while I was sleeping. It'll grow back." She dismissed, her voice dripping with condescension. "Stop being so vain." I stayed locked in that bathroom for hours, alternating between racking sobs and sitting in numb shock, the silence punctuated only by the distant sounds of my family preparing for the wedding. Around noon, there was a soft knock at the door. "Claire, it was Ava. Can I come in?" I unlocked the door, partly hoping my sister would be horrified by what our parents had done. Instead, after an initial gasp of feigned shock, I watched as her expression subtly shifted to something akin to satisfaction, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. "Oh my God," she said, her hand covering her mouth unconvincingly. "What happened to your hair? Ask Mom," I said bitterly, my voice devoid of emotion. "She did this while I was sleeping." Ava's eyes darted away guiltily, a telltale sign. "Well, that was extreme, but maybe it's for the best. You always get so much attention for your hair." In that crushing moment, a cold, hard certainty settled in my heart she had known. Maybe not the exact brutal plan, but she had known something would be done to ensure I didn't outshine her. "I'm not coming to your wedding," I stated flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. "Find another bridesmaid." Ava's fake sympathy vanished instantly, replaced by a steely resolve. "You absolutely are coming. If you don't, Mom and Dad will cut you off completely. No more help with your apartment rent, no more family connections for your job, nothing. You'll be completely on your own." The threat was crystal clear, though I was financially independent. My parents had co-signed my apartment lease in the expensive city where I worked, and they could indeed make my life very difficult if they chose to. "You're my sister," I whispered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "How could you let them do this to me?" "It's just hair," she replied coldly, her voice devoid of remorse. "Stop being so dramatic. The wedding is tomorrow, and you will be there looking exactly how Mom planned." End of discussion. When she left, I frantically searched for ways to salvage the disaster on my head. Maybe I had a scarf? But when I emerged from the bathroom hours later, a chilling realization dawned. My mother had thought of that too. My suitcase had been emptied, all scarves, hats, and hair accessories mysteriously missing. "We've scheduled an emergency appointment with the wedding hairstylist tomorrow." My mother informed me over dinner, which I was forced to attend, despite my red, swollen eyes and shattered spirit. She thinks she can even it out into a very short pixie cut. My father didn't even look at me during the entire meal, his silence a cruel indictment. Ava alternated between feigning concern when our relatives called to check on wedding preparations and smug, triumphant little smiles thrown my way when no one was looking. That night, locked in my childhood bedroom, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the silence of the suburban night punctuated by my own racing thoughts. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, clear, incandescent anger, unlike anything I had ever experienced. For years, I had made myself smaller, quieter, to accommodate my sister's insatiable insecurities. I had accepted the unjust role of family scapegoat, foolishly believing that eventually my patience and understanding would be rewarded with acceptance, with love. But this heinous violation, this physical assault on my identity, had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As I fingered the jagged, pathetic remains of my once beautiful hair, something hardened deep inside me. The beautiful, accommodating daughter died that night, replaced by someone who finally understood that some betrayals cannot and should not be forgiven. Morning arrived with a relentless pounding on my door at 600 a.m. sharp. "Up and at 'em!" My mother's voice chirped, sickeningly cheerful, as if yesterday had never happened. "We've got a bride to prepare." The hairstylist Maria arrived at 700 a.m. and gasped audibly when she saw me, genuine horror in her eyes. "What happened?" she whispered, her face pale. "Family haircut emergency," my mother replied smoothly, cutting me off before I could speak, her lie practiced and effortless. "Claire had a little accident with some gum and tried to cut it out herself. Teenage impulsiveness, you know. We need you to work your magic." I sat silently as Maria did her best, watching more of my hair fall to the floor. Each snip a fresh wound as she tried to create something symmetrical from the chaotic ruin. The end result was an extremely short pixie cut that left my ears and neck completely exposed. I looked utterly different, vulnerable, and exposed in a way that made me feel naked, stripped bare. "I'm so sorry," Maria whispered when my mother stepped out to check on Ava. "I did the best I could." "It's not your fault," I replied, meeting her eyes in the mirror, a silent plea for understanding. "But could you do me a favor? If anyone asks, please tell them the truth that I didn't do this to myself." She nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the profound wrongness she sensed but couldn't fully comprehend. Getting into the bridesmaid dress was another layer of humiliation. The size too large lavender monstrosity hung off my frame, making me look even more diminished, shorn, and pathetic with my new haircut. When the makeup artist tried to create a glamorous look to compensate for my ravaged appearance, my mother abruptly intervened. No, much more natural for Claire," she insisted, her voice tight with control. "Just some light powder and maybe a touch of lip balm. We don't want to overdo it." By the time we arrived at the church, I looked like a pale, shorn lamb drowning in fabric, a ghost of my former self. The other bridesmaids gasped audibly when they saw me, their shock impossible to hide. "What happened to your hair, Claire?" Ava's college roommate Bethany exclaimed, her voice laced with genuine concern. Before I could answer, Ava swooped in resplendent in her designer wedding gown, a vision of carefully curated perfection. "Poor Claire had a meltdown last night," she stage whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, her voice thick with false sympathy. "She cut it herself. We think she's been under a lot of stress lately. Please don't mention it. We're all trying to be supportive." The look she gave me dared me to contradict her. With our parents hovering nearby, their watchful eyes on me, I remained silent, the humiliation burning through me like acid, searing my very soul. The ceremony was a blur, a disorienting haze of white lace and hushed whispers. I mechanically followed the instructions, walked down the aisle, holding my bouquet. Stood beside the other bridesmaids and played my assigned role, a puppet on a string. Throughout it all, I could feel the stares and whispers, 1,000 eyes dissecting my ruined appearance. The church was filled with people who had known me my whole life, all of them visibly shocked by my transformation. It was during the photo session that I hit rock bottom, the final crushing blow. The photographer, a friend of Marcus's family, kept trying to position me in the back row or subtly behind other bridesmaids. "Maybe Claire could sit for this one," he suggested diplomatically, with the others standing behind her. "Actually," my mother interjected, her voice sharp, "why don't we do a few without Claire just to have options?" I stood aside, a phantom presence, watching as they took photo after photo without me, only including me in the shots where I was least visible, a mere afterthought. Through it all, Ava beamed more confident and radiant with each picture where she wasn't standing next to her normally prettier sister. During the reception, I overheard countless variations of the malicious story my family was meticulously spreading. "Yes, poor thing had some kind of episode," my mother told my great aunt, her voice oozing with fake concern. "We're very concerned about her stability." "Always been the attention seeker," my father confided to his business partner, his voice dismissive. Couldn't stand that it wasn't about her for once. Even Ava, while accepting congratulations from college friends, managed to weave it into her narrative. "Thank you. Yes, it's been a challenging week with family drama. My sister's having some issues. We're supporting her through this difficult time." The only person who showed me genuine kindness, a beacon in the darkness, was Ethan, Marcus's brother and best man. He sat beside me at the otherwise empty table where I'd been deliberately placed far from the main wedding party. "You didn't do this to yourself, did you?" he asked quietly, his voice gentle. The simple question, the first acknowledgement of the truth all day, nearly broke me. I shook my head slightly, not trusting myself to speak without dissolving into tears. "I thought not," he said, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "For what it's worth, you still look beautiful. Different, but beautiful." His kindness, paradoxically, was almost harder to bear than the relentless cruelty threatening to shatter my fragile composure. I excused myself before the tears could start again. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The person looking back was a stranger, vulnerable, exposed, diminished. But as I stood there, something subtly shifted in my eyes. The helpless victim began to fade, replaced by something harder, something unbreakable. I returned to the reception just as my father was giving his toast, his voice booming across the room. I stood in the back, a silent observer, listening as he praised Ava effusively, his words dripping with favoritism. "Ava has always been our shining star," he declared, raising his glass. "The daughter who made us proud with her intelligence, her determination, and her good judgment." The crowd applauded appreciatively. "Some children," he continued with a pointed, scathing glance in my direction, "seek attention through their looks or drama, but Ava has substance, real value. Marcus, you've chosen a woman of quality, not just beauty that fades or can be cut away." The thinly veiled, vicious reference drew uncomfortable, nervous laughter from guests who sensed the edge, but didn't fully grasp its profound cruelty. In that moment, watching my father publicly celebrate his preferred daughter, while simultaneously taking a brutal dig at me after what they'd done, something crystallized inside me. This family would never change. The toxic roles were too deeply entrenched, too comfortable for them. I would always be the scapegoat, the one to be diminished, so Ava could feel superior. My parents would always enable and encourage this perverse dynamic. No amount of forgiveness or understanding on my part would ever change that fundamental, agonizing truth. As this shattering realization washed over me, a strange, liberating calm replaced the raw hurt and humiliation. I understood with perfect crystalline clarity that I owed these people nothing, not my presence, not my forgiveness, and certainly not my continued submission to their abuse. Most importantly, I realized they deserved consequences for what they had done. Real, lasting consequences that they couldn't smooth over with lies or social manipulation. As I watched Ava and Marcus cut their cake surrounded by adoring family and friends, a plan began to meticulously form in my mind, each detail slotting into place. They thought cutting my hair had neutralized me, made me small and powerless. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had inadvertently created someone with absolutely nothing left to lose. The sudden realization that I no longer cared about preserving my fractured relationship with my family was surprisingly liberating, a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. For years, I had walked on eggshells, desperately hoping that if I was accommodating enough, patient enough, loving enough, they would eventually reciprocate. That delusion, that comforting lie, had been brutally cut away along with my hair. I watched the reception with new eyes, cataloging opportunities, instead of nursing my deep wounds. Ava and Marcus would be spending their wedding night in the opulent bridal suite of the Grand Palmer Hotel before flying to Bali the next morning for their 2-week honeymoon. All their gifts and luggage were being managed by the wedding coordinator, Sarah, who conveniently had a master key to all the wedding-related rooms. Ethan found me again during the dancing portion of the reception. "How are you holding up?" he asked, genuine concern softening his eyes. "Actually, I could use some help," I said, making a quick, intuitive decision to trust him. "I need to run an errand, but I don't have my phone or car keys. My parents took them." His eyebrows shot up a flicker of surprise in his gaze. "They took your phone. That's controlling." "You have no idea," I replied, a wry smile playing on my lips. "Would you be willing to help me? I just need to pick up a few things." To my immense relief, he agreed without pressing for details. "I can slip out for about 30 minutes without anyone noticing," he offered. "Will that work?" It was perfect. During the father-daughter dance, a moment of contrived sentimentality, Ethan and I slipped out to his car. He drove me to a 24-hour pharmacy where I purchased what I needed: a bottle of clear, colorless liquid itching powder solution, a compact sewing kit, and some other discreet supplies. "Are you going to tell me what this is for?" he asked as we drove back, his curiosity piqued. "Probably better if I don't," I replied honestly, a mischievous glint in my eye. "But I promise no one will be physically harmed." He nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Whatever happened with your hair, that wasn't an accident or something you did, was it?" "No," I said simply, my voice firm. "My mother cut it while I was sleeping to make sure I wouldn't look prettier than Ava at the wedding." His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. "That's messed up. I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said, a strange sense of empowerment washing over me. It opened my eyes to some truths I've been avoiding for years. Back at the reception, Ethan helped me re-enter without drawing attention. As we parted ways, he pressed something into my hand, his business card with his personal cell number scrawled on the back. "If you need anything, a friend, a listening ear, whatever, call me," he said, his gaze intense. "And Claire, whatever you're planning, make it count." With Ethan's unexpected allyship boosting my confidence, I put my intricate plan into motion. First, I needed access to the bridal suite. During the bouquet toss, an event Emma made sure I was conspicuously excluded from, I approached Sarah, the wedding coordinator. "Ava asked me to add a few special touches to the bridal suite." I lied smoothly, my voice calm and confident. "A surprise for Marcus." "Oh, that's so thoughtful," Sarah gushed, her face lighting up. "I can let you in for a few minutes." "Actually," I continued, leaning in conspiratorially, "she wanted it to be a surprise for everyone. You know how Ava loves to be the only one who gets credit for thoughtful gestures." I gave a knowing look that suggested this was a familiar family dynamic, and Sarah nodded in understanding, completely falling for it. "Here's my master key. Just return it within 20 minutes, and I'll pretend I never saw you." With key in hand, I slipped away to the bridal suite, my heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and righteous fury. Inside, I worked quickly and methodically. First, I located Ava's wedding night lingerie, carefully laid out on the bed. Using the colorless itching powder solution, I meticulously treated the delicate fabric, paying special attention to the most sensitive areas. The solution would dry completely clear with no residue or scent, but would activate with body heat, turning their romantic night into an itchy nightmare. Next, I located their honeymoon luggage. I treated select items of clothing, swimsuits, underwear, and a few shirts, with the same insidious solution. I also found their honeymoon travel folder containing their first-class tickets to Bali. I carefully photographed the original tickets, then replaced them with nearly identical counterfeits I would create later, changing only the flight time to 3 hours later than their actual departure. In Ava's toiletry bag, I found her special wedding makeup kit. I left most items untouched, but subtly swapped her waterproof mascara for a non-waterproof version of the exact same brand. Bali's notorious humidity would ensure raccoon eyes in every honeymoon photo, a small but satisfying detail. While in the suite, I also took discreet photos of the room setup and key details I would need later. I then placed a tiny, unnoticeable wireless camera in the corner of the room, angled to capture the bed area, but not intimate enough to be truly invasive. I wasn't interested in violating their privacy completely, just enough to document the delicious chaos that would ensue when the itching powder activated. I returned the key to Sarah exactly 19 minutes after borrowing it, thanking her profusely for her help with Ava's surprise. She winked conspiratorially, never suspecting she had aided in something far beyond a simple sisterly wedding gift. The second phase of my plan required digital access. Fortunately, Ava had always been carelessly lax with her passwords, often using predictable variations of her birthday or our childhood pets' names. During a strategic bathroom break, I borrowed a bridesmaid's phone to check the time, and quickly accessed Ava's cloud storage using her predictable password pattern. There, I found all the professional photos that had already been uploaded from earlier in the day. I downloaded several key ones, particularly those featuring Ava in her wedding dress, looking radiant and utterly self-satisfied. These would be incredibly useful later. I also discreetly noted her social media login and email access information for Phase 3, which would be executed after I left the wedding. By the time the reception was winding down, my preparations were complete. I had meticulously laid the groundwork for a revenge that would unfold gradually, subtly, over the next several days. Each element was timed to maximize impact, while meticulously ensuring nothing could be definitively traced back to me. As Ava and Marcus prepared to leave for their wedding night showered with rose petals and well wishes, I stood in the background watching with a calm, almost serene smile. My mother caught my eye, clearly suspicious of my improved mood, her brow furrowed with unease. "I hope you're not planning to make a scene," she hissed as she passed me, her voice tight with thinly veiled warning. "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied truthfully, my voice light and innocent. "I've accepted things exactly as they are." She seemed unsettled by my unexpected serenity, but was quickly distracted by the flurry of departure preparations. I didn't bother saying goodbye to any of them. Ava, my parents, or the extended family who had witnessed my humiliation without a single intervention. They didn't deserve closure, not after what they had done. Instead, I silently left the venue and took a taxi to a hotel I had booked using the bridesmaid's borrowed phone. There, in the blessed privacy of my room, I completed the digital portion of my meticulous revenge plan. First, I created the counterfeit plane tickets perfectly matching the originals, but with the later departure time. These I emailed to the hotel's business center to be printed and discreetly delivered to the bridal suite, with a congratulatory note from the wedding party. Next, I accessed Ava's social media accounts and scheduled several posts to go live during their honeymoon. Nothing overtly malicious, just unflattering photos I had downloaded earlier, and awkwardly worded captions that would make her look slightly ridiculous to her carefully curated following. Feeling like literally the most beautiful bride in history today. Sorry to all other brides who could never one caption read a subtle twist of the knife. I also sent a carefully worded anonymous email to Ava's workplace raising concerns about discrepancies, in her resume attaching documentation from her college showing her actual graduation date, and GPA differed from what she had claimed. It was subtle enough to trigger an investigation, but not serious enough to definitively cost her job, just enough to sow seeds of doubt and professional scrutiny. Finally, I meticulously edited together a short video compilation using audio recorded on my bridesmaid's borrowed phone throughout the day. Snippets of my parents and Ava discussing the haircutting incident, admitting it was deliberate, and even laughing about my humiliation. This I saved for potential future use, a nuclear option if needed. As I completed these tasks, a profound sense of power and autonomy washed over me, a feeling I hadn't known in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't passively accepting my family's cruel treatment. I was actively taking control of my own narrative, crafting my destiny. The delicious prospect of Ava and Marcus's honeymoon being derailed by itching missed flights, social media embarrassment, and professional scrutiny filled me not with guilt, but with an almost overwhelming sense of justice. They had violated me physically and emotionally, thinking I would simply absorb the abuse as I always had. They had no idea that in cutting my hair, they had also severed the last threads of loyalty and submission that had bound me to them. They thought they had ensured Ava would shine on her wedding day by diminishing me. Instead, they had inadvertently created the architect of their own social downfall. And unlike them, I had meticulously ensured my revenge would be impossible to trace directly back to me. There would be no concrete evidence, only a series of unfortunate coincidences that would cast a long, dark shadow over Ava's perfect wedding and honeymoon. As I fell asleep that night in my anonymous hotel room, I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of consequences for my family and the beginning of true freedom for me. The first exhilarating indications that my plan was working arrived at 2:37 a.m., when my burner email account received an automated alert from the hidden camera in the bridal suite. I watched with vindictive satisfaction as Ava frantically scratched at her skin, her romantic wedding night transforming into an itchy, agonizing nightmare. Marcus soon followed suit, both of them examining the luxurious lingerie and bedsheets in utter confusion. "It burns!" Ava wailed, her perfect bridal makeup now streaked with tears, a pathetic sight. "Something's wrong with these sheets. They called hotel management demanding new bedding and a room change in the middle of the night." I could vividly imagine the chaotic scene, the entitled bride in her itching lingerie, the confused groom, the bewildered night manager. By the time new accommodations were arranged, their romantic wedding night was thoroughly irrevocably ruined. I slept soundly for the first time in days. The next morning brought a flurry of panicked messages from Ava to her bridesmaids group chat, which I meticulously monitored through the account access I still had on the borrowed phone. Their flight to Bali was scheduled for 10:00 a.m., but thanks to my switched tickets, they wouldn't discover the problem until they attempted to check in. Emergency! Ava texted at 8:43 a.m. Our tickets are wrong. Airport says they're for 1:00 p.m., but the confirmation email says 10:00 a.m. I'm freaking out. The cascade of problems continued throughout the day, a symphony of misery. When they finally boarded their later flight, they discovered their luggage had gone on the original plane and would be sitting unattended in Bali for hours. Ava's social media accounts began posting the unflattering wedding photos I had meticulously scheduled, showing her double chin in one, a weird facial expression in another, all with captions that sounded just enough like her to be believable, but were subtly self-absorbed and ridiculous. Feeling like literally the most beautiful bride in history today. Sorry to all other brides who could never one post declared. Her friends were commenting with confusion, some privately messaging her to ask if she was okay, or if her account had been hacked. By the time Ava finally realized what was happening, the posts had been live for hours, seen by hundreds of her devoted followers, a digital scarlet letter. Meanwhile, back home, the fallout from the wedding was spreading in ways I hadn't directly orchestrated, but had certainly hoped would occur. Maria, the hairstylist, had indeed told several people the truth about my hair, expressing her horror at what my mother had done. This sparked whispers throughout our social circle, with many reaching out to me directly once I reactivated my regular phone. Is it true what they did to you? Texted my cousin Sarah. That's seriously messed up. I always knew Aunt Eleanor favored Ava, but this is another level, wrote my cousin Josh. Even my mother's best friend Linda sent a tentative message. I've known your mother for 30 years and I'm shocked. Are you okay, honey? I responded selectively, neither confirming nor denying the rumors, which only fueled more delicious speculation. The video compilation I had created remained unused in my back pocket, a nuclear option if ever needed. 3 days into Ava and Marcus's honeymoon, the itching powder I had applied to select clothing items continued to cause widespread problems. Ava's frantic messages to her bridesmaids group chat detailed mysterious rashes, emergency pharmacy runs, and ruined excursions. The carefully staged Instagram photos she managed to post between my scheduled ones showed strained smiles and red irritated skin, poorly concealed with filters. A week into their trip, I received an unexpected call from Ethan. I don't know exactly what you did, he said without preamble, his voice tinged with amusement. But Marcus just called his parents freaking out about everything going wrong. Ava's having a complete meltdown because her work called about discrepancies in her employment history. I smiled to myself, a private victory. The anonymous tip had hit its mark. That sounds stressful, I replied neutrally, my voice deliberately even. Honeymoons can be so unpredictable. There was a pause, a moment of comfortable silence. You're something else, Claire, he finally said, but his tone was admiring rather than accusatory. Listen, I'm back in the city next week. Would you want to grab coffee? No wedding talk, I promise. The invitation surprised me, but not unpleasantly. I'd like that, I replied, a genuine smile forming on my lips. My parents began calling incessantly around day 10 of the honeymoon, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Claire, we need to talk about these rumors going around, my father's tight voice demanded. People are saying very inappropriate things about our family. Sweetheart, whatever misunderstanding has occurred, we need to present a united front. My mother's falsely sweet message insisted, her voice cloying. Family loyalty is everything. I ignored them all, focusing instead on meticulously rebuilding my life. I had moved out of my apartment and into a new place using the savings I'd been quietly accumulating for years. I'd taken a week off work to process everything and was actively considering a job offer in another city, far away from my family's suffocating sphere of influence. The most satisfying moment came when Ava and Marcus returned from their honeymoon. Instead of the glowing, relaxed newlyweds they had expected to be, they arrived home exhausted, irritated, and sporting lingering rashes. Ava's carefully cultivated social media image had been utterly tarnished by the posts I had scheduled, and her workplace investigation was still ongoing, a dark cloud hanging over her. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life, she sobbed to our cousin Amanda, who later relayed the conversation to me, her voice filled with a mixture of pity and morbid fascination. Everything went wrong. My lingerie gave me a rash. We missed our original flight. Our luggage was sitting in the Bali airport for hours, and someone stole my favorite shoes. My Instagram was posting things I didn't write, and now my boss is questioning my credentials. That's a lot of bad luck, Amanda had replied carefully, her tone guarded. It's not bad luck. Ava had snapped, her voice rising in hysteria. It's like someone deliberately sabotaged everything. But she had no proof, no tangible way to connect the dots back to me. I had been careful to ensure each element of my revenge could be explained by mundane mishaps. Itching powder, could be an allergic reaction to detergent ticket time confusion, a simple booking error. Social media glitches happened all the time, and if Ava had indeed misrepresented her credentials well, that was hardly anyone else's fault. A month after the wedding, I met my parents for coffee at a neutral location, a bustling cafe where they couldn't make a scene. They looked haggard, aged by the social fallout from their actions. "We need to clear the air," my father began without preamble, his voice strained. "These rumors about what happened with your hair are damaging our reputation." "What rumors?" I asked innocently, my face a mask of feigned ignorance. "That you cut off my hair while I was sleeping to make sure I wouldn't look better than Ava at her wedding. That's not a rumor, Dad. That's what happened." "It wasn't like that," my mother insisted, though her eyes darted away guiltily, unable to meet my gaze. "We were trying to help you. You've always hidden behind your looks, and we thought, dash it, save it." I interrupted calmly, my voice firm and unwavering. "I'm not here to listen to your justifications. I'm here to tell you that I'm moving to Seattle for a new job opportunity. I won't be available for family gatherings going forward. You can't just cut us off." My father blustered, his face reddening with anger. "We're your parents. Watch me," I replied, standing up, my heart pounding with a thrilling sense of defiance. "By the way, I have recordings of both of you admitting what you did to my hair and laughing about it. If you ever try to contact me again or spread lies about me, those recordings will find their way to everyone we know." It was a calculated risk. I did have audio, but it wasn't as damning as I implied. Their faces paled, their bravado crumbling. The threat worked. "You wouldn't," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. "Try me," I challenged, my voice steely. "You created this version of me when you violated me in my sleep. Live with the consequences." I walked out of that cafe feeling truly free for the first time in my life. The family that had diminished me for years now had no power over me. My revenge had not only given me satisfaction, but had severed the unhealthy bonds that had kept me tethered to their toxic dynamic. Ava eventually texted me a single accusatory message. "I know it was you. I can't prove it, but I know." I never responded. She didn't deserve even that much acknowledgement. Instead, I focused on meticulously building my new life, one where I was valued for my whole self, not diminished for shining too brightly. And surprisingly, that new life included Ethan, whose coffee invitation turned into dinner, which blossomed into regular dating, a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection. "I knew you were special the moment I saw how you handled that wedding situation," he told me months later, his eyes full of admiration. "Anyone who could endure what your family did and emerge stronger has a kind of resilience that's rare." It was strange yet incredibly healing to be appreciated for the very qualities my family had tried to break. But as my hair grew back now in a stylish, sophisticated bob that suited me better than my long waves ever had, I realized that in trying to cut me down, my family had inadvertently forced me to grow in ways I never would have otherwise. Their betrayal had, in the most unexpected way, set me free. Lessons from the unraveling. 6 months after what I now refer to as the wedding incident, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. My hair had grown into a chic, sophisticated bob that framed my face perfectly, a style I might never have tried if not forced by circumstance. What had begun as a profound violation had ironically led to a physical transformation that better suited the new me, stronger, more confident, less willing to dim my light for others' comfort. I had successfully moved to Seattle, embraced that exciting job opportunity, and was absolutely thriving in a workplace that genuinely valued my contributions rather than seeing them as threats. My apartment overlooked Puget Sound, and each morning I would sip coffee on my small balcony, watching ferries cross the water, and marveling at how peaceful life could be without constant family drama. My relationship with Ethan had blossomed into something I hadn't known was possible. Unlike my family, he celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges without a hint of competition or manipulation. When I received a promotion just 4 months into my new job, he brought champagne and made dinner genuinely proud of my achievement. "You know what I love about you," he said that night as we toasted my success. "You went through something that would have broken most people, and instead of letting it define you as a victim, you used it as a catalyst to build a better life." His perspective helped me process what had happened in healthier ways. While my wedding revenge had given me temporary satisfaction, the true victory wasn't in the chaos I'd created for Ava's honeymoon, or the social consequences my parents faced. The real victory was in reclaiming my power and refusing to remain in relationships that required my diminishment. I maintained limited, carefully boundary-bound contact with extended family members who had reached out with genuine concern after the wedding. My cousin Sarah visited Seattle for a weekend, and we had honest, cathartic conversations about the family dynamics we'd both observed, but never previously acknowledged. "I always thought your parents were so hard on you," she admitted over dinner, her voice filled with regret.
But I never said anything because, well, they're the adults, right? I figured they must know what they were doing. That's how abusive dynamics perpetuate, I replied, using language I'd learned in therapy. Everyone watches, but no one intervenes because they assume there must be a justification they're not seeing. My parents and Ava made sporadic attempts to reestablish contact, though never with genuine accountability. My mother sent a Christmas card with a gift certificate for a hair salon, her idea of an apology that completely missed the point. My father left voicemails about family obligations and moving forward without ever acknowledging what they had done. Ava occasionally sent texts that vacillated between accusatory, "You ruined my honeymoon," and falsely conciliatory, "We should try to be sisters again." I responded to none of them. The distance and silence were not punishments, but boundaries necessary protections for my ongoing healing process. That healing journey was complex and nonlinear. I worked diligently with a therapist specializing in family trauma, unpacking not just the wedding incident, but the years of subtle diminishment that had preceded it. I discovered that much of my self-worth had been inextricably tied to external validation, particularly around my appearance, which my family had simultaneously prized and punished me for. "They weaponized your beauty against you," my therapist observed profoundly. "They taught you it was both your greatest asset and your greatest character flaw." This profound insight helped me develop a healthier, more balanced relationship with my appearance. I began to see my looks as just one aspect of my multifaceted identity, rather than its defining feature or greatest liability. I took pleasure in dressing well and doing my hair, but I no longer feared outshining others or felt the need to apologize for my natural attributes. One of the most healing experiences came through an unexpected channel. After sharing parts of my story in an online support forum for people with toxic family relationships, I received dozens of heartfelt messages from others with eerily similar experiences. Their stories of family betrayal, scapegoating, and the difficult journey toward healing resonated deeply with me. Inspired by this powerful connection, I started a small support group in Seattle for people navigating toxic family dynamics. Our monthly meetings became sacred spaces where wounds could be acknowledged, boundaries celebrated, and healing journeys honored without judgment. "You turned your pain into purpose," Ethan observed after I told him about a particularly powerful group session. "That's the difference between mere revenge and true justice." His words stuck with me. While my wedding revenge had given me temporary satisfaction, the real transformation came from building something constructive from the rubble of those shattered relationships. My group members weren't interested in getting even with their toxic families. They wanted to get free and help others do the same. As the 1-year anniversary of the wedding approached, I received a lengthy email from my mother. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, this one contained something resembling genuine accountability. "I've been seeing a counselor at church," she wrote. "She's helping me understand that what we did to you was wrong. I won't make excuses. At the time, I genuinely believed I was balancing some cosmic scale by making you less beautiful for Ava's day. I see now how twisted that thinking was. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I recognize the harm I caused." I read the email several times, searching for the manipulative angle, the hidden guilt trip or demand. Finding none, I allowed myself to feel the complex emotions it triggered: vindication, lingering, anger, cautious hope, and a deep sadness for the mother-daughter relationship we might have had in a healthier family system. After careful consideration, I replied with a single sentence: "Thank you for acknowledging the harm. It's a first step." I didn't offer forgiveness or a restored relationship, but I left the door cracked open for the possibility of healing if genuine change truly occurred. It was the most I could honestly give. My father never reached a similar awareness, clinging stubbornly to his distorted reality. And Ava remained stubbornly convinced she had been the victim of my jealousy, rather than the beneficiary of their cruelty. Some relationships simply cannot be saved, and that knowledge no longer devastated me. Instead, I focused on the family I was building by choice. Friends who celebrated rather than competed with me, a partner who saw all of me and loved what he saw, and a community of fellow survivors who understood the arduous journey from trauma to healing. Ethan proposed on a rainy Seattle evening, 18 months after we met, presenting a beautiful ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "You taught me what courage looks like," he said as he knelt before me, his eyes shining with love. "I want to spend my life with someone who knows how to love fiercely and live authentically, even when it's hard." I said yes through tears of pure joy, marveling at how my worst day had eventually led to my very best ones. When we discussed wedding plans, there was no question about whether my biological family would be invited. Their absence wasn't punitive, but protective of the sacred joy we were creating together and the healthy future we were meticulously building. "Family is who treats you like family," I told Ethan as we finalized our small guest list of genuine supporters. I learned that the hard way. The night before our intimate ceremony, I stood before the mirror running my fingers through my hair, now grown into a stylish shoulder-length cut that I absolutely loved. I barely recognized the woman who had once allowed herself to be diminished to make others comfortable. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood her worth, wasn't determined by others' ability to celebrate it. Looking back at the journey from that horrific morning before Ava's wedding to this peaceful evening before my own, I realized the greatest revenge hadn't been in the chaos I'd created for them, but in the profound peace I'd created for myself. They had tried to cut away my power, never realizing they were actually setting me free.
Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more about navigating difficult family dynamics and building a life of authentic joy. Thank you for listening to my story. May it remind you that sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest sources of strength and wisdom. Like, share, and remember, family should lift you up, not cut you down.